Hello everyone. This is the 32nd part of the story, I'm Voldemort. Chapter 203 next. Coming back to the outside world, Tom's consciousness arrived just in time to see the Pendragon ring glow for a brief moment, signaling its acceptance of him. Luck was very surprised that Tom could gain acceptance from all three rings so easily. He thought for sure that at least one of the rings would deny him, but that didn't seem to be the case. I have to stop underestimating him. Luck thought as he shook his head from side to side. Druella, on the other hand, isn't at all surprised by the situation. She's one of the people that's spent the most time with Tom, so she had complete confidence in him from the beginning. Although, she is still curious about why he was blushing a minute ago. Time may have been passing in the ring, but on the outside, not even a minute has passed since he put the last ring on. Her female senses were tingling like never before. Druella felt as though something happened during the Lufay ring's trial. Finished, I believe I'm allowed entrance into my family vaults now? Tom says and looks to Luck for confirmation. Yes, but before you do that you need to come to a decision. Luck said, getting Tom and Druella's undivided attention. I imagine you'll want us to reveal your Pendragon lordship, as you've already shown your heirship to the world, but what about the others? Hearing the question, Tom didn't need any time to think. He's already come to a decision on this matter. Don't reveal them. Although I'm not ashamed of my Lufay and Slytherin heritage, that doesn't mean a negative stigma won't be associated due to the world knowing of them. I don't need the press to start talking about the dark side of the wizarding world's hero. Many would follow those headlines like sheep, and I don't want to deal with it. Tom states resolutely. I agree wholeheartedly, but can the bank do that though? Are they not supposed to report a new lord to the Wizengamot, since they would be filling a seat there? Druella asked curiously. No, we are not forced to report new lords to anyone. We take the privacy of our clients very seriously. There are three things we as Gringotts Bank can do in these situations. First, we can reveal the new lord along with his title and name. Second, we could not reveal anything at all, which would be what Lord Riddle seems to want. Third, we can reveal that there's a new lord, but he or she wants to keep their identity anonymous. In this case, your title would be known but your name wouldn't. Luck explains, looking to Tom for his final decision. So, the government would know that there's a lord or lady for both Slytherin and Lufay, huh? Tom questioned his thoughts out loud. Yes, I'm sure the public would know soon after as well. You would also have to pick a proxy to take your place on the Wizengamot for both houses though. Luck explains further. Thinking it over, Tom started to see the perks of going with the third option. 1. He would get more votes on the Wizengamot, which is always good. The proxy wouldn't be a problem, as he could just pick one of his followers. With the number of votes he already has combined with what he will receive, Tom would control a very large portion of the Wizengamot. Nothing in the Wizengamot would get done without Tom's approval. 2. With the emergence of two of the most hated houses, Tom's new fans may rally behind him even further. When dealing with a dark house like Lufay, who better to go to than the Pendragon war hero, Tom Riddle. Also, Tom could use both proxies to lure out any future enemies. If sometime in the future anyone wants to go against Tom in any way, whether it be politically or physically, where else would they go for help than the Lufay or Slytherin proxy? Then, once Tom knows his enemies, he can either have them killed quietly in an accident, or turn them to his side willingly or otherwise. Although this is a good plan, that doesn't mean there isn't any downside. Tom would be heavily distancing himself from the Slytherin and Lufay names in the eyes of the public. He would most likely never have a chance to publicly take up those names again. They would be the names of his enemies, but in reality, Tom would be pulling the strings from behind the scenes. After a moment of thought, Tom turns to his beautiful fiancée for her opinion. What do you think I should do? Tom asks curiously. Druella doesn't answer immediately and takes a moment to think about it. The third option. Hearing her answer, Tom smiles softly in her direction. That's what I was leaning towards as well, he says and turns to Aluk. You heard the woman. Option 3 it is. Good, we'll immediately report your Pendragon lordship, but the others will have to wait until you've designated a proxy. Aluk says with a nod of his head. All right, I'll have the proxies for you by tomorrow. Also, let's not report all 3 lordships too closely together. Reporting Pendragon now is fine, but let's wait a few months between each of them. It wouldn't be good to cause suspicion by announcing 3 supposedly separate lordships so close together. Tom advises his account manager. As Aluk heard and felt Tom's intentions, an evil goblin smile formed on his face. I really shouldn't underestimate him. Chapter 204 To the Vaults. With everything settled, Tom stands from his seat along with Druella and looks at Aluk expectantly. Oh yes, the vaults. I do admit that I'm very curious about them. Would you mind me accompanying you inside them as well? Especially the Pendragon vault. Aluk asked as he stood up from his seat as well. No, that's not happening, Tom says resolutely as he motions for Aluk to start leading. Although Aluk was turned down rather bluntly, he wasn't affected by it at all. He didn't expect Tom to agree in the first place. Aluk simply asked as he would regret not doing so later on. Especially if Tom would have said yes, but alas he didn't. Follow along, Aluk says gruffly and walks out the door. Following the short goblin for a while, Tom is led to a minecart, similar to the one in the movie. Along the way down the tracks, they went through at least 4 separate checkpoints. Each checkpoint was guarded by the strongest-looking goblins Tom had ever seen. Although their bodies were small, they donned shining heavy armor with short swords to match. Both the armor and swords seemed to be made of goblin silver, and based on the way they were inscribed and faintly glowed, they must have been enchanted as well. Along with the guards, each checkpoint had a giant vault-like door blocking the cart from moving forward. As they got lower and lower, the guards kept increased and the vault doors needed more verification from different goblins in order for them to open. After taking a very long roller coaster ride down to what seemed to be the very bottom of the Gringotts tunnels, Tom found himself in a giant cavern with very few vault doors lining the walls. In the center of the cavern itself, Tom could see at least 15 giant dragons with chains keeping them from attacking, like a dog with its leash tied to a pole. I see you've taken an interest in the guard dogs, Aluk says, referring to the dragons. They're there to protect against would-be robbers. Since we are here officially and not to steal, the leashes stay short, keeping them away from the vaults and any customers. If and when a thief manages to get this low, which is almost impossible, their leashes become longer, allowing them to attack the perpetrator or perpetrators. After hearing about how the dragons work, Tom gave Aluk a nod of approval. Do they ever fight each other? Druella questioned. Yes, sometimes. Aluk nods in Druella's direction. Although when that happens, we remove the aggressor and try to find another area for them to guard. Then we'll integrate a more tame dragon to take its place. Situations like that don't usually happen though. As long as they're left alone, fed, watered, and groomed on occasion, the dragons tend to keep calm. Groomed? Druella asked with a raised eyebrow. Although dragons don't have any hair, that doesn't mean they don't need grooming, Tom says as he read about this in a book a few years ago. They still get dirty and have the occasional ingrown scale that needs attention. Hearing Tom's explanation, Aluk nodded along with every word. When I was younger, I had to groom the dragons and clean their areas. It's one of the lowest level jobs here at Gringotts, but it pays very well because no one wants to do it. The amount of gold I made back then was a lot for such a young goblin. Luck says with a fond sneer on his face. Did you have to clean up the? Druella asks the question that her fiancé was thinking as well. Yes, shoveling dragon dung isn't my fondest memory. Luck's fond sneer turns to disgust at the mere thought of dragon poop. Well, enough about the dragons. We have vaults to plunder. Tom says with a greedy smile on his face. They're your own family vaults. There's nothing to plunder. It's already yours. Druella states with a roll of her eyes. Don't ruin the mood, love. The booty is just around the corner. Tom says, causing Druella to cringe at his behavior. Booty, seriously? Are you a pirate now? She says, but Tom ignores her and turns to Luck. Are all of my vaults down here? He asks. Seeing that she's been ignored, Druella huffs an annoyed sigh and decides to just let Tom play his little game. Yes, which do you want to start with first? Slytherin, Luffy, or Pendragon? Luck asks. Let's start with Pendragon. Tom chooses, dying to know if the vault has Excalibur. Luck and Druella could easily tell why Tom wanted to check Pendragon first. After all, Excalibur is a legendary sword said to grant its user incredible power. That is if it accepts you as its wielder, of course. Follow me and don't disturb the dragons. Luck says as he starts leading them towards the back of the cavern. As they walked along the walls of the cavern, as to keep their distance from the dragons in the center, Tom saw the sigils of many strong and powerful houses on the vaults they passed. Soon, they arrived at a vault door that was far grander than the others. In the center of the door is the sigil of the Pendragon royal family, which is a red diamond with a black sword similar to Excalibur going straight down the middle, and a golden dragon head in the middle. All right, how do we get in? Tom asked and Luck handed him a small knife. Place some blood and a bit of your magic at the tip of the sword on the sigil. Luck instructs as he points to the door. Chapter 205, Another Test? Really? Taking the knife from Luck's hand, Tom walks to the giant vault, cuts his hand, and presses his palm to the tip of the sword. Remembering that he has to add some magic as well, Tom pushes some magic out as his blood smears onto the top of the sword. With the requirements met to open the vault, the Pendragon's sigil lit up in the royal colors, gold and red, lighting up the dark cavern and drawing the attention of the leashed dragons. Although they see something going on and try to get a closer look, the dragons can't get far, as their leashes keep them from straying too far from the center. Some of the dragons tried to pull on their leashes like an unruly dog, but the chains are made of goblin silver and enchanted to be firm and unbreakable. As the light of the sigil died down, the sound of gears clicking and turning could be heard from behind the door. Soon, the giant vault door parted from the middle, revealing a dimly lit stairwell leading downwards. Turning to the side, Tom saw Luck peeking into the vault with an expectant look on his face. After seeing the plain stairwell, Luck clicked his tongue in annoyance. He thought that he would at least get the chance to see a bit of the famous Pendragon vault, and maybe if he was lucky, get a glimpse of the holy sword Excalibur. Sadly for him, his poor little goblin hopes were crushed by a simple stairway. Wait out here, Luck. We'll be back shortly. Tom says as he holds his arm out to Druella with a smile on his face. Shall we? Yes, let's go. Druella exclaims as she grasps his arm. Luck simply stood there with a jealous look on his face, as Tom and Druella strolled into the vault and down the stairs. Sensing that the new owner entered the vault, the security kicked in and the vault door closed behind them, keeping any unwanted guests from entering. Speaking of unwanted guests, Luck could do nothing as he watched the door close, blocking him from even sneaking the slightest peek inside. Inside the vault, Tom and Druella walked down what had to be hundreds of steps, leading to an empty room with a statue of Arthur pulling Excalibur from the stone. As they entered the room, the statue's head moved, looking down at Tom and Drusilla. None of its body seemed to move an inch, but from the neck up, the statue seemed to be alive or animated somehow. Place your hand on me, and you will be judged. If you're found lacking, you will not be granted access to the vault of your ancestors. The statue of Arthur says, still rooted to the ground. After stating what had to be done in order to move forward, the statue turned its head and lost its life, returning back to what looks like a normal hunk of finely carved rock. Another test? Tom thought out loud as he looked at the statue curiously. Will it test your strength or your character? Perhaps both? Drusilla questioned as she studied the statue as well, not finding any type of runes or something that could help them. Master, I believe I could be of some assistance. Arthur says telepathically through his and Tom's bond. I was just about to ask. What is this test? Tom asks, knowing that Arthur has to know as it was his vault. Placing your hand on the statue will cause it to read your mind. This test is in place to keep anyone with a bad character from having access to the Pendragon's wealth, books, and artifacts. Arthur explains. Hearing his symbiote's explanation, Tom couldn't help but sigh in annoyance. Tom wouldn't call himself the best person in the world, but he's certainly not the worst either. If he used the Wizarding World's classification, then he would call himself gray. Neither light nor dark, just a bit of everything with some scruples and morals thrown in here and there. The question is, would the statue accept him? After all, he did enslave Arthur Pendragon himself. When the statue reads that portion of his mind, Tom isn't so sure that it would accept him. Is there another way around this test? Tom asked Arthur. If I was in my old body, I could get you past it easily, but I'm afraid that won't be possible anymore. You'll have to find your own way to pass, Master. My apologies. Arthur says, knowing that the vault wouldn't recognize his symbiote body. All right, thanks for the help. Tom says as he thinks over what to do. After explaining to Drusilla what he heard from Arthur, both sides put their heads together and came up with a hopeful solution. When in doubt, rely on occlumency. Tom says as Drusilla nods beside him. That seems to be the only option. She says as Tom sits on the spot and starts meditating. Entering his inner world, Tom opened his laptop full of his memories and creates a new folder. After sorting his memories from good, neutral, and bad, Tom copied and pasted all of his good and neutral memories into the new folder. These memories contained every good and light action he has ever done, along with the normal memories like his studies, relationships, and other normal things that would keep any suspicion off of him. If Tom only used his good memories, the statue could get suspicious as to why his more everyday memories are missing. Chapter 206, Visiting Morgana Again. After almost an hour of sorting and double-checking for any mistakes, Tom materialized a USB and moved the new file into it. With his test-ready memories in the USB, Tom materializes another identical laptop, plugs the USB in, and moves the file into it. Now that Tom has two sets of memories, the question is, how will he hide his original memories? Tom doesn't know whether the statue could scan his entire mind and bypass his shield and other defenses. Arthur, how does the statue work? Does it bypass any occlumency defenses or what? Tom asks without much hope of getting an answer. Arthur is a great source of information, but he is no wizard. The possibility of him knowing the intricacies of this statue's magic is very low. I'm sorry, Master. I wasn't born with magic like my sister, so I was never taught more than the basic knowledge needed for ruling. Arthur apologizes. No problem, you've already helped plenty. Thanks anyway. Tom says and goes back to the drawing board. Tom can't afford to test anything on the statue as it could be a one-chance type of thing. He can't just brute force his way through as well. For all he knows, Merlin could have placed the vault in another dimension and this vault may just be the access point. If Tom destroys the access point, the vault would be lost forever, which would mean Excalibur could be lost forever. That sounds like something Merlin would set up and Tom isn't willing to let that happen. Maybe Morgana has some insight? Tom thought. Morgana is Arthur's sister and one of Merlin's biggest enemies. She would have been around at the time this was made, so why not ask her about it? It never hurts to ask, but I feel that dealing with her will be troublesome. Tom thought as he pushed his consciousness into the Lu Fei ring for the second time today. I see you've returned, handsome. The second Tom arrives he hears the melodious voice of Morgana chime in his ear. You couldn't stay away from me, could you? Tom appeared exactly where he stood upon leaving earlier. In the bedroom with a naked Morgana Lu Fei hanging on his arm. Her bare breasts still sandwiching his arm as she smiles flirtatiously up at him. Pulling his arm out of the villainous witch's grasp, Tom moves to the sofa and takes a seat, crossing his legs and staring at her expectantly. Get something clothes on and take a seat. We have something to talk about. Tom orders, causing Morgana to huff and turn her head away. Do you know how many people would gut themselves in order to see me exposed like this? Are you sure you want me to cover up? She says flirtatiously, showcasing her assets. Yes, now get dressed and take a seat. Tom states plainly. Earlier, he was taken by surprise and didn't expect her to suddenly become naked and start rubbing herself on him. Now, Tom is prepared and using his occlumency to keep his emotions in check. Sigh, fine. Druella grumbles as she waves her hand, materializing clothes on her naked body. If what she's wearing can even be called clothes in the first place. Instead of a dress or simple pants and a shirt, Morgana is now dressed in very skimpy black lingerie. She's really laying it on thick. Tom internally sighed as he motioned for her to sit across from him. Instead of following his instruction, Morgana sauntered over and sat next to him, grasping his arm once again and leaning her head on his shoulder. What do you need to talk about, cutie? Morgana asks, practically whispering in his ear. Deciding that he will let this slide, for now, Tom gets straight to business. Sigh, what do you know about the Pendragon Vault? He asks as a knowing smirk forms on Morgana's lips. Has my cute little master of death run into that annoying statue? Morgana cranes her head a bit and whispers into Tom's ear. Yes, what do you know of it? Tom asks as he uses his occlumency to the max, stopping himself from reacting to her behavior. I know a bit. It was put there to stop me from getting in after all. I once broke into Gringotts and stole some knickknacks from my brother's vault. I am Arthur's sister, so my blood and magic could open the door. Morgana reveals. What did you steal? Tom asks curiously. A few artifacts and some books that were stolen from me to begin with. I tried to stay under the radar at the time, so I didn't take more than what wouldn't be noticed. Although, that wound up being the wrong choice to make. Merlin found out somehow, and on my second trip to the vault, that annoying statue appeared. Morgana explained without stopping her flirtatious behavior for a single moment. What do you know about the statue? Tom asked. Hearing Tom's question, Morgana raised an elegant eyebrow at him. Have you also been accepted by the Pendragon Ring? Morgana asks as she wasn't sure if he was robbing the place like her or simply trying to access his own vault. Yes, but I've heard the statue tests one's character. I wouldn't call myself an evil person, but I'm not wholly good either. Tom answers, knowing she has to have some information for him. You don't think the statue would accept you? Morgana states matter-of-factly, getting a nod from Tom. Hee hee, I like you even more now. Would you like to become my husband? No thanks. What do you know about the statue? Tom turns her down instantly and puts the conversation back on track. So cruel. Morgana moans and removes herself from Tom's side, sitting across from him, as he wanted in the first place. But I like it like that. I'll tell you what I know on one condition. Chapter 207 Deal. I'll tell you what I know on one condition. Morgana says as her flirtatious behavior stops and in turn, is replaced with a far more serious expression. Finally, you stopped with your games. Tom grumbles out and sighs in relief. What is it that you want? Hearing Tom's words, a satisfied smirk forms on Morgana's face. I want you to promise not to remove me from this ring and find me a body to take over. The body must fit my tastes though. I refuse to be fat, ugly, or a different gender. Morgana says with a haughty attitude. Tom hums and places his hand on his chin in contemplation. I'm willing to promise to not remove you from my ring, but I make no promises when it comes to the body. Then I'm not telling you anything. Morgana states as she looks away from him. Don't be too greedy, Morgana. You're giving me information on a statue while I'm promising not to send you back to the afterlife. I'm already being very generous by accepting a portion of your demands. Do you think I can't just call death and have you dragged back to whatever hellhole you were before? Tom says as a cruel smile graces his lips. You know what? Why don't I call her now? DEA. As Tom was about to finish calling Lady Death, Morgana jumps from her seat and covers Tom's mouth with both of her hands. Fine, I accept. Just please don't send me back there. Morgana says with a truly frightened look on her face. Were you calling me, Master? A new voice rings through the room. Morgana, who was already scared out of her mind, mechanically turns her head to see Lady Death standing behind her. Swatting Morgana's hand away, Tom looks at Lady Death with a small smile. Yes, but I don't need you anymore. Thanks for coming anyway. I'll come to visit soon so we can train together again. Tom says, not really wanting to get his butt kicked again, but no one else can give him a challenge anymore. The only way to grow is to keep pushing his training further. Sadly, no one else can provide that but Lady Death. Maybe Manasa would make a good sparring partner as well, but I can only visit her through sleep or meditation, and it's not my real body as well. Tom thought as Morgana cowered at his side. Speaking of Manasa, Tom hasn't visited her in a while, nor has she called for him. I should try to make time to check on her. Tom thought. Morgana is very similar to the original Tom Riddle. She has an extreme fear of dying, and after experiencing her afterlife, that fear only grew stronger. When she heard that Tom wasn't going to ask Death to send her back, Morgana relaxed only a bit and let out a relieved sigh. Sure. I can't wait to continue our torture, sparring. Lady Death said with a small smile on her face as she disappears completely. She finally admits it. Tom didn't know what to say as he dreaded his future torture. Thank you. Morgana says in relief as she drops down on the sofa like a rag doll. Thanks for what? Tom asks. For not sending me back. She elaborates. You agreed to the deal and I try my best to keep my word. Now, what do you know about the statue? Tom asks, not wanting to waste any more time. Although I'm grateful you didn't send me back to that hell, do you think I'm some first-year student? Swear it on your magic. Morgana says as she collects her disheveled self and sits across from him once again. Sure. Tom agrees far more easily than she thought he would. I, Tom Riddle, swear an oath on my magic that I will not remove, nor order anyone else to remove Morgana Le Fay from my Le Fay ring unless of course she allows it or she betrays me in any way, shape, or form. Hearing Tom making the oath so easily, Morgana smiled happily, but as she heard the little bit added near the end, a small grimace graced her lips. "Did you have to add that as well?" Morgana asked in a tone full of dissatisfaction. "Yes, do you think I would trust you completely?" Tom replies with a raised eyebrow. "The second you do anything that I deem as a betrayal, I'm sending your ass back to eternal damnation." "Fine." Morgana grits her teeth, internally swearing to never act against Tom. At least not until she isn't in a situation where Tom could easily send her back to that horrible place. Just thinking of it sends a shiver down Morgana's spine. "Good, now tell me everything you know about the statue." After finishing his false memories and getting some very valuable information from Morgana, Tom's consciousness returns to the material world. Seeing Tom open his eyes, Druella smiled happily. "Did you finish setting everything up?" she asks as he opens his eyes and stood from his meditative position. "Yup, but we need to change to some more extreme measures." "What are you talking about?" Druella looks at her fiancé in confusion. "It's like this. This marks the end of part 32 of the story, I'm Voldemort. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe the video to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.